Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Culturised. This is where we get to find out how we incorporate culture into our daily lives, whether it's a native culture, an ethnic culture, social culture, whatever it is. As long as you got culture and you are making it rise, that's what it's all about. Today, I'm so excited to invite us on this show. It's these two guys. I read their bios. It's going to take about 30 minutes probably to read each of their bios. But before we do that, because this is a culture show, we like to welcome our guests first before we even know who they are with Lei. So first of all, and I know you guys are looking going, he's just going to hand it to him. I just got to follow some CDC guidelines. That's just how it goes. So for you, brother. So let me just tell you who they are real quick. And I'm so excited because the one sitting next to me, we grew up together on this really tiny island. Let me just read what he's all about. General partner with Startup Capital Ventures, also serves on the board of directors for the SCV portfolio company Hobnob, board observer with Brainify. He's the co-founder and executive director of Purple Mai'a Foundation, a 501c3 education technology nonprofit organization. He's on the board of directors of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, teaches a course on venture capital at the William S. Richardson School of Law. He's committed, this is what I like about him, committed community organizer. He is a proud product of a Hawaii public school. And we're going to find out what school that is because we got to go through all the local culture usuals. With him sitting across the table from me. Now, we're going to find out how many high schools he went to in a few seconds, but he is a serial social entrepreneur, innovator, community organizer. He invented and launched the first commercial crowdfunding service, which scaled $100 million, right? He holds multiple patents in his designs across 5 different industries. He was a keynote speaker at Microsoft's annual developers conference. Community service includes U.S. Navy, the Peace Corps. He's a past Petra Fellow, which is the Center of Community Change, and East-West Center Fellow, general studies focused on software engineering and Asian industrialization, summa cum laude at UH Manoa, and of course, raised in public housing. Let that sink in, my friends. How's about a round of applause for Donavan, Kealoha, and Olin, Lagon? How are you guys, brother?
Hey, not too bad. Man. Mahalo.
How you guys been?
Good, brother. Thanks for having us.
After this, it's like, are you guys even have free time?
We're super productive. Yeah.
So this is what I want to do. So I know you guys are always busy, and you guys are going at 100 miles an hour, and this is a cultured show. So we need to just kind of ease up and ease into this thing, right? You guys drink kava?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Of course, right? So, would you guys like some?
I think that one.
So we got to thank our friends from Kapa Kava. If you guys never tried, this is infused kava, right? We've all drink regular kava, but we've got a pineapple peach, I think that is. We've got poliahus, and what do we got? I can't see. It's something good. Choose one, or I'll pour it out for you guys. Let's try this one. You guys got your coffee, your Star Advertiser coffee mugs? Here we go. Usually we would be using an apu, but we're modern day. So here we go. There you go. We won't put too much. We got to relax you guys. So if you guys are wondering about kava, a lot of times this is what happens when you sit around with friends and family and just talk story. And that's what we're going to do. And kava will get us to that point of just hanging out. Okay?
It has the smell, but not the color. I'm excited.
It has that smell?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Bula.
Oh, yeah. Bula, aloha.
It's pretty good.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Right.
good. Yeah.
Cool. Now, I want to get right into this. You guys, I mean, listen to your accolades, listen to what you guys have been doing. I want to get right into, let's go with you, Olin, first. High school you went to. It's a local culture, right? When you meet somebody, hey, what high school you went?
Yeah. What high school I never go.
Oh, is that right?
I think, yeah, I guess I grew up in KPT, so either you either real buff or you skinny and can run fast. So obviously I'm buff. Yeah. But yeah, I started at Farrington and I didn't do so well there. Then I went to Waipahu and didn't do so well there. I kind of joked that my alcohol blood content level was higher than my GPA, but Yeah, now I get that. So then ended up at Campbell to get kind of my credits up, and then finally an alternative learning program at Pearl City High School.
Wow.
Yeah. So auto mechanics in the morning, auto body in the afternoon.
That's amazing. And right through all the high schools.
2 years of that. Yeah.
Wow. So high school there. And so ALC, is it called ALC, right?
I think so.
So that was the last one you went to.
Yeah, Pearl City.
Nice. Donovan, high school you went to.
High school, Lanai. Proud to be a fine lad, class of 9 or something.
Lanai High School. So we got to talk about that because you and I, a lot of people always say, oh, you're from Lanai, where? Did you go from kindergarten all the way? Because Lanai High School is like, as we know, is just all one.
Yeah, so I was raised on Lanai by my grandparents, Mabel and Charles Kealoha. They raised me from preschool time, baby kid time, to like first and second grade, and then I left, went back to stay with my parents, and then ultimately high school made it back to the island, and then graduated high school.
It's always, you ever meet people, and if for both of you, they're like, oh, what high school you went? And then you tell them, they're like, what? Because of what you guys are doing now. Do you guys get that?
Yeah, we were talking on the break. I shared an experience. I am now fortunate to be in positions where, I sit on pretty cool boards, and talk about some interesting things. And after a meeting, I remember this board member, he was probably the board chair, asking me what high school I went to, Iolani Punoho, and I was like, bro, I went to Lanai, bro, I'm a fine lad. But I don't know. I guess, as they say, if I can make it, anybody can make it. So
that's exactly. Did you get that, Olin, a lot of times?
I've turned that into, like, when I tell people I grew up in public housing, they're like, holy moly, for real? And then I tell them that, that attitude is actually pretty hard on people, because what you're saying is that you don't expect me as someone from KPT to make it. And that's wrong, because the kids there are just as talented as anywhere else, right? So I don't know if that's not the Pono thing to say, but I try to be kind of cool when I say it, something like that.
I like that, because, that's what they're doing. They put this stigma on you, like, oh, like when people, oh, you're from Lanai. And I get, you don't look like you're from Lanai. What? And then they say, where are you from? I was like, the left side. But so you guys have, growing up, of course, like you said, with grandparents and in the culture, and that was part of your life. Did you ever think that the things you learned from growing up and the aspirations and the motivations you guys had would actually bring you to the point of creating this nonprofit that you guys did?
Both of my grandparents were pure Hawaiians. But they never really emphasized overtly speaking Hawaiian. They always encouraged me to do well in school. And so I did. I studied hard, did all those kinds of things. And so, and when we talk about culture, I think it's sort of the way they live their lives, the Hawaiian values, that sort of was the basis for how they live, how they interacted with the community, how they took care of all those grandkids, right, that you know of.
Yeah.
And then so that's one culture, but then the other culture that we grew up on, Lanai, was sort of a mix, right? There was Japanese cultures, Filipino cultures, Hawaiian culture, and it sort of blended into this plantation. To me, it was, plantations have this sort of connotation of, oppression to a certain extent, right? One company town, but to me it was wonderful because it was a place where, we could go anywhere, we could eat at anybody's house. We would get lickings too if we never listened to. And so it was, that culture, I think, and the basis of it being Hawaiian culture that, stuck with me as I went through academic life and in career. And I think what we do now with our professional and also our nonprofit pursuits.
Growing up in housing, it's kind of like a modern day plantation. You had every culture in there. Did you pull from different cultures that, like, people, like your friends, Samoans, Micronesians, Hawaiians, did you pull from each one, or were you solid in your foundation of being Kanaka?
Yeah, there weren't a lot of Kanaka at KPT, so I wish I was Samoan because they were the big ones. But I did spend a lot of time living with my tutu, as well, my grandma, like Donavan, so Makue, Kamakau. And so like Donavan, she wasn't sharing the Hawaiian culture with me, so we had to sort of kind of figure this out on our own, which is pretty amazing. Like 10 years ago, he and I made our first papakuiai, like by hand.
Nice.
And took us a while. I cheat a little bit, engineer, right? So, but anyway, so we get that done, and then it made me think, like, my mom did this, and her parents, and her parents, and then we have 800 years of unbroken history that I almost broke, and so I did it, and now my boys do it too. So I think part of this journey is what we all have to figure out is like, sometimes you got to go out and just open your eyes and look.
And I think that's the thing with Kanaka, our kilo skills. Sometimes we forget, right? We forget to observe. So like you said, our grandparents didn't blatantly be like, you have to olalo Hawaii, you have to do this. They led by example. With that said, how did Purple Mai'a come about? Was that part of it?
Some of this, I think.
Is that what it was? Just see exactly that. You sit around and you have a couple of cups of ava. But I want to talk about that. Purple Mai'a, amazing foundation with culture, technology, and everything you guys are doing. What led you guys to create Purple Mai'a? First of all, I love the name. That name is an amazing name. But tell us what led you guys to create that.
It got to start on Lanai. That's where I actually met Olin. He had, at the time, with a Hawaiian language degree, I was teaching back at home on Lanai, and I was going through this leadership development program. And the folks that organized it brought Olin over, and he was telling our class about the experiences, and I was like, "Man, this Kanaka, it's pretty cool, bro. It's some smart paga." So started talking to him, built a relationship, and then when I moved back to go to law school, we stayed in touch. We sort of shared the same circles. And in doing that, then we started thinking about like, well, how can we work together and do some projects? And so we did some cool projects, we think pretty interesting, pretty cool, a lot of impact. And that's right around the time when we said, well, I started my career as a venture capitalist. He was starting yet another company, recognized that there were not a lot of people that looked like us in our businesses and wanted to kind of change that, right? Create a pathway for more folks, not just Hawaiians, but people of these islands to be in these kinds of spaces. And so we said, let's go do a nonprofit. And so we started telling everybody, we're gonna do this nonprofit. It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna teach kids how to code. And then you start telling everybody. And then finally somebody asks you, well, have you started? And they go, oh, they're calling yourself, now you gotta go, right? So we started, right? We started this at a school in Palolo, where Olin lived for a time. And you want to...
What's the mission of Purple Mai'a?
It's actually changing because initially it was educational. When we started this, there were 3 high schools in the entire state that offered second-year computer science, only 3.
Wow.
And so all these communities had keiki without that opportunity. So that's one of the reasons why we started. Donavan is really deep. He's a deep thinker. And so he came up with the initial name. It was like this beautiful, long, olelo Hawaii in Hawaiian. I told him, bro, that's just too long. It's like, I cannot wrap. So
we kind of put a sticker on the back of a truck like that.
So we started coming up with funny names. But when you think about the kauna of Purple Mai'a, like purple is the rarest color on earth.
Yeah.
And so you never see it unless you look for it. Right? So when you work with keiki, it's your kuleana to see that purple in them, right? So there's a lot of, Mai'a is also, olelo. So when you listen, the leaves are listening into the earth real deeply, right? So we got kind of lucky in some respects.
Yeah, it's a definite conversation starter, especially with the kupuna, because those who can olelo, they look at us, but I'm kind of funny because Mai'a has these connotations of kolohenes, often it's sexual kind of, but like, it also means a whole bunch of different things. And so we found this Olelo No'el after coming up with the name, and it goes he Mai'a akalai huiai to that effect. But it's it describes a person that you malama them when they're at a young age and they grow up to be a productive person in society. And so that was kind of things came together in a way.
The depth of that's just true Kanaka. That's exactly that. So you guys started with teaching kids basically coding, or was it just computer skills?
Yeah, it was. So it was just teaching kids how to code and getting them interested, because that's the first thing, right? You got to get them interested. You got to get them stoked about it. But we recognized that there was a bigger responsibility, bigger kuleana, right? Because what are we teaching them for? Teach these skills and set them away. And that's when we brought on our third co-founder, who's now here, Kelsey Amos, and that's when we started really thinking about how do we bridge ike kupuna and modern kind of stuff. Right,
transferring that knowledge to modern day. How was it as soon as you started reaching out to communities? Was it a like, man, these kids want to learn, or was there some sort of, you had to kind of market them and pull them in somehow?
He's an educator, I'm not. So we're kind of making this up, right? So we feel like the community has had our back to be flexible. Like, for example, like we wanted half the class to be wahine. And so, to try to force that sometimes may not be natural, like technology, like all the boys apply, but that's not just for boys. And so we've added some things to it that have made it more interesting. But I think the impact has been pretty universal. We're now statewide. We haven't had any problems getting into communities.
Yeah, it's been organic in a sense. Like we're in the tech industry, and there's this term about hacking things, right? And so instead of going through the front door, you go through the side door, any way to try to go as fast as possible to make things happen. And so that one school, the first year became 3 schools, became 12 schools, and a whole bunch of schools now.
How sometimes do you find people have a hard time wrapping their head around it? Oh, culture and technology, which is kind of ike kupuna, but looking forward. Kavama mua, kavama hope. Like, how does that happen in technology? You guys find that difficult, or?
Not necessarily. I think people are welcoming of embracing sort of what we're trying to do. We're also, it's also an opportunity to really get deep in terms of how we put together curriculum. So we got some really interesting things that we teach. So as an example, we teach kids holly building. So they half the class is learning holly building, the weaving and and then the other part of it is learning how to build websites, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But then there are sort of concepts that you could kind of bounce back and forth. And so, I don't see a sort of difference between.
So we talked earlier about how we grew up, right? It's our grandparents and parents weren't blatantly about this is how you got to live culture. This is culture, right? Today, in your guys' manao and you guys in your thought, how do you think culture is being lived and practiced today? Is it too blatant? Is it enough? Is it not enough? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I guess I can speak just for myself and my family, because I'm late to the game, so I'm learning myself. So I'm taking Hawaiian language classes online. He and I have a ohana lo'i, so we take our kids there and we get in the mud, and it started off as just completely overgrown, and now we've got rows of kalo, chicken skin kind of thing. So I think for me, it's the experiential thing. So I will have an answer soon, but I need to sort of practice first before I go out and say anything, right? So I'm still learning.
We're always going to be like that, but I love the fact that now you're involving the ohana, and like you said earlier, you don't want to be the one to break that lineage. So now you're practicing, and so you guys have an ohana lo'i. So you guys, it's like just hang out on the weekends, bring the.
No, well we get there early. We do protocol. We kilo, right? We check out what needs to be done. We get in. We do work. It's a little bit easier now because we're able to clear it and plant now. I bring my daughter, she is not the biggest fan of doing those kinds of things, but I told her she's going to appreciate it later, right?
I was just going to ask, as parents, as fathers, do you feel there's this responsibility? Yes, you guys are doing culture and technology, but now with this, making sure we get back into the lo'i, we get back into the aina, is there added pressure as a Kanaka father to make sure this happens?
Definitely. I think that the quest to be authentic, right? And not just speak about it because we read about it and this is the way we're going to do it, right? These values are lived, right? They are passed down to us. And so it's imperative, I think, that we learn as much as we can, we do as much as we can, and we have that sort of permeate through what we do in our jobs and our work.
See, I love the fact that it's my head is just like, these guys are in tech. These guys are doing everything contemporary and modern, but it's all culturally based of how we grew up. The things that you observed from your grandparents, how much of that do you, when you're doing something today, go, that's what they told me, or that's what they showed me? How much of that in today, what you guys are doing with Purple Mai'a and technology and all that, where you have those moments where you're standing there going, that's what tutu meant?
One of our values at Purple Mai'a, so as the org, I got to think about these things, right? And we have, our staff has grown from 2 people to now, over 24, I think, both part-time, full-time, but it's sort of, you got to think about these kinds of things. And so one of our values, I call it baby luau. And everybody's like, well, what is that? And this growing up on Lanai, right? It's everybody shows up, everybody chop, clean, everybody got to go harvest, pull the stuff together. But that was awesome because there was Belina, and there was this huge, caring for each other, taking care of what you got to do. And so those are the kinds of values and things that we try to bring into the organization. And so you come to our events, you hosted our event, it feels like a big baby luau, and that's the kind of
And I think that's the great thing about what you guys are doing. Like, you guys are both community minded. Again, we got to thank these two brilliant Kanaka from Purple Mai'a hanging out with us. We got to thank Star Advertiser giving us a space to hang out. And of course, Jam's World for making my body look better than it should. Stay risen. Hey, so welcome back to Culturised. You're in for a treat. This is the extended version for web, so it's going to get a little bit crazier. Sitting with our good friends from Purple Mai'a, Donavan and Olin. If you joined us earlier, we were talking about what Purple Mai'a has been doing. Culture, technology, you're a nonprofit, you're enticing and teaching kids and adults, right? And you guys have grown. What was this from the beginning? How many kids or how many people did you have when you first started Purple Mai'a, teaching-wise?
I think it was just one teacher. Literally one teacher that became two teachers, and now we're up to close to 24, I think.
And then student-wise?
Single class in Polo Valley with about 12 kids to now, I think cumulatively over 1,000 kids. I think presently we have about maybe 200 kids across the state.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is the question you guys probably always get, and I'm thinking about it right now. So once these kids go through these programs and they learn all this tech and learn how to code and learn how to do all these things, what's it like job market wise? I mean, is there a chance? Is it a future for them, or are they just going to kind of feel good about, oh yeah, I learned this stuff in culture?
Yeah. Well, I'll let Olin talk about, because I mean, when we started talking about this, I was inspired by his sort of view of tech for the most part being a meritocracy. But you want to share like that?
Yeah, if you're in math class and the teacher says, here's a program, and everybody raises their hand and they all get them wrong and nobody's shamed, like that would be amazing, right? Everybody would learn, but nobody would do that. But that's tech. Like in software engineering, for example, you're teaching that, oh, I got a mistake. Oh, that's a bug. So like it's gotten to the point where I think tech is a really good way to teach anyone how to make mistakes and to fall gracefully. It's beautiful from that perspective. So those skills translate to anything. So the kids that we teach, the adults that we teach, will get these tangible skills that can immediately translate into something that's specific to that technology, but also whatever else they want to do. Because the more times you fail quickly, the quicker you can do anything you want in the world, right? So that's what I want my kids to learn. It's like, fall on your face, it's funny. Yeah, get up and go and get it.
And that's a hard thing, because and two things I always think about that we don't like. We don't like to be embarrassed, and we don't like to fail.
Right.
Make shame, man. Yeah, that's a big thing. Coming back to Olin's story about, I remember him telling me when I was visiting with him, prior to us getting together and starting Purple Mai'a, he was doing a company that had raised in some venture capital. And I think the New York Times was interviewing him, and they were asking him, like, well, where did your CTO go to school? And like, he was like, well, I don't know where he went to school. Right? Where did you go to school? And so that's sort of the idea of a meritocracy, right? If you can get the skills, you can get the jobs anywhere. So
and he was, by the way, a high school dropout, and I didn't remember that. It was like, oh, they brought him and go to college, but he's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
But that's for some kids. Like, so that's like at a high, philosophically, that's a cool thing about tech. Now we understand that they're like, not everybody's like that, right? And so you got to build pathways, and you got to create structure for many of our other kids, right, to be able to move into the tech space. And so we have developed the newest program that's called the Hiapo program, sort of a pili to the Kaikaina program. And with that program, it's looking to rapidly upskill and credentialize and train young adults, career changers, for careers in tech. So we work with folks that are interested in learning Salesforce. So Salesforce is like world's largest CRM tool. We train them, they get their certs, and then they move into the jobs. We help them find jobs. So that's that. And then another program that we also house that you helped out with is the Purple Prize.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So that one is more oriented toward those that want to move into like startups, and they want to build a company or work on a project or do those kinds of things too. And so we've been doing that for the last 4 years. We've worked with 50 teams, 50 projects, some of which have become social enterprises, some of which have become for-profit companies. We've given away over $200,000 or awarded over $200,000 in prizes, and some of them actually have the chance, I think, knock on wood, to become pretty significant companies. And so that's, when we were brainstorming about this, we think that this is an opportunity to, kako'o in our respects, the stuff that we do. tech and innovation, entrepreneurship, that kind of stuff.
I was going to say, I mean, just looking at both of you two and the students that come in, I mean, it's almost like they have no excuse. Like they look at your backgrounds and be like, well, I got to, right? I got to. If the reason why I like what you guys are doing is because this is all university level, all these things you can get, but you're doing it the way we used to from a cultural standpoint, right? We're taking what our grandparents and parents taught us, but we're being a little bit more blatant about it and teaching them rather than saying, no, you're just going to watch me for about 15 years, right? But now you guys are doing it. What is it like when somebody finishes the program, like you were talking earlier, somebody will ask, oh, so what are your accolades? What kind of paper do you have? What kind of universities, you know? And you're like, oh, I went through Purple Mai'a. I mean, do you get people that kind of crinkle their brow and go, wait, what?
Well, that's something that we're developing, right? I mean, this thing is organic, and we're kind of finding our way there. I mean, we've at least a handful of students that have been working with us for the last 3 and 4, maybe 3 years now, and so they're doing like internship kinds of level things with us. They've developed a pretty impressive portfolio. So instead of grades, right, and this is true of like the stuff that we do, right? We don't necessarily ask for resumes, right? We like, show us what you've done, talk us through it. And that's the kind of body of work that I think our students are building up in addition to the skills, so they can like, well, I built this game and this is why it does this, and like talk through this function and what this function does. Is
there anybody that stands out in your mind, Olin, that has been with you guys student-wise, program-wise, even from Purple Prize? I mean, whatever programs you guys have. Anybody stands out right now?
A bunch, but one 8th grader on Maui, I went to our Maui class, and she was the person I was going to mentor, so I sat in front of her and I asked her, hey, you got a computer at home? And she said, oh, uncle, I live on a beach and I'm moving electricity. It's like, bad uncle. That's a bad question. But then that girl taught me a lot. Like, for example, when we looked at her progress that semester, like she would go up and then crash, then go up and crash. So traditionally you would say, oh, what's going on? But you know what she was doing? When she was crashing, she was helping the other kids. Wow. So pausing her work. So I got chicken skin thinking about what lessons I learned from her and how do we mentor that and what does that mean for us? And so I think that reflective back and forth is we're getting all the time. So that's one story I have.
I love that. I love the fact that what you guys are doing. So again, Purple Mai'a, if they want to get involved, you guys have a website. You guys, where can we find you? Where's somebody that, even an adult that wants to get in tech?
If I may, do not Google Purple Mai'a because it's a purple thing for Wahine. So,
I was just gonna say.
Yeah. So, but it's purple. Maia.org. Yeah, we're almost beating that other company, by the way. Yeah,
you guys got to talk to somebody at Google. Yeah. So Andrea's probably gonna go Google it right now. Don't be surprised with what you find. So you guys in the Purple Mai'a, and all the programs are in there.
Yep, purplemai'a.org. Join our newsletter, purplemai'a.org/news. If you are inclined to help support some of our keiki, you can donate. Same site.
And so from keiki all the way to adults.
Keiki all the way to adults. Wow. Yeah, middle school to adults. I think our oldest, Haumana, is probably middle age right now. She's in that that workforce training program that we have right now.
So you do have a work. There you go. Yeah. So again, mahalo, you guys, for being here. You guys want some more before you go? You right? Are you guys?
Of course.
Is the mouth numb already? So we got to thank Star Advertiser, of course, for giving us a space to perpetuate, preserve, and practice our culture and talk about it. We got to thank Kava for providing the social lubricant. We got to thank Jam's World, of course, for making me look good on Makino, and Culturised. That's what it's all about. So whatever you do in your life, make sure you do something to raise your culture and stay risen.